Hi, my name is Olivia Gomez, and this past semester I focused my efforts and my interest through the capstone program on the idea of experiencing the unusual. And by unusual, I don't necessarily mean strange or weird, although it could mean that. Mostly I mean those experiences that deviate from our normal, predictable daily routines. And I thought I'd start with a fable because those always hold a lot of meaning for me. And this one is about six blind men and an elephant who, these blind men have never before encountered an elephant, and they hear that one has come to their village, so they decide to check it out. And they come across the elephant, and the first of the six blind men happens first upon the elephant's side, and he feels it and says, well, this elephant is a lot like a wall. But then the second of the blind men comes across the elephant's tail, and he says, no, actually, this elephant is a lot like a rope. Then the third of the blind men comes across the elephant's knee, and he touches it and says, actually, this elephant is a lot like a tree. And so in this way, all six of the blind men come across a different part of the elephant. And because of this, in each of their minds, a different representation of an elephant is formed. And John Godfrey Sachs turned this into a poem, and he concludes, so each of these men was partly in the right, and yet all were in the wrong. And classically, the moral of this story pertains to religious war, religious conflict, and how men of one country and one religion will fight against men of another when they have really no idea what they're fighting against. They may have one small piece of the puzzle, but they don't know the entirety of the concept that they're being pitted against. And obviously, this is an extremely important idea, but looking through the lens of my project, I identified a different moral in the story, and it was this. The world is an elephant, and if we experience just one small part of it, then we will never know the nature of the whole. In the same way, if we confine ourselves to one narrow channel of life, then we may never find what we love the most. We may never find the piece of the whole that brings us the most joy. Our happiness is defined by how we spend our time, and so it's imperative that we spend it wisely. As a high school student, up until recently, I was stuck in the same setting each day. There was little divergence from my regular routine. Even once I'd left school, I came home to my usual responsibilities, the primary one being homework. This capstone program started out as nothing more than an intriguing idea, and now it has contributed to my core beliefs. So through several different experiences, each of which contributed to my personal research for the project. Not only did I extract ideas from within each experience, I also came to conclusions about the larger idea of experiences and how unusual ones and unique ones can contribute to our passions. It's not easy to explain a concept as large and as vague as learning from experiences because, well, what the heck is an experience? Google defines it as practical contact with and observation of facts or events. But looking at that definition, it seems like everything is an experience, and it is. Everything that we observe and think about and everything that enters our conscious is an opportunity to learn. An opportunity, essentially, to come to some grand conclusion about life. But that doesn't happen every day, and that's because people don't often, focus on an idea and work through it in order to come to a conclusion, to come to some general idea about life. And in school, students are often focusing on how much they want a class to be over rather than how the lessons they're learning in that class could contribute to their life. And that's because students aren't usually motivated or inspired by school. And how can we be inspired when we're expected to go through the same routine each day? How can we be inspired when, each day becomes monotonous? And that happened a long time ago for me. It's not easy to explain a concept as large and as vague as learning from experiences, but I'm going to give it my best shot. So I'd like to take you all through the adventures that I embarked on for my project, and I'll start with the experience that I lovingly refer to as the one that got away, because I actually attended 2 sessions at the Greater Boston Zen Center and then decided not to return. The first time I went, I was required to attend a brief orientation session. And there was one other couple besides me that were new to the practice that day. And following that, we sat down on our cushions and a gong went off. and we were instructed to sit for 25 minutes and think about nothing but our breathing. And that sounds not hard, but it is hard. And so I sat down, and I crossed my legs and got into the right position. And I'm breathing, focusing on my breathing, and I'm like, oh shoot, my leg's asleep. And I don't know, and I'm thinking, what do they definitely said something about this in the orientation. What do you do when your leg falls asleep? Just be okay with it, they said. They said, you're gonna be fine. 25 minutes with your leg asleep, it's not gonna fall off, but mine was gonna fall off. And so I'm trying really hard not to do anything about it, but I'm tapping it a little bit, and I'm like wrestling around. I'm the only one making any noise in the whole room. And just to add insult to injury, the couple next to me stands up and walks out. And I'm like, did I just ruin meditation for this couple? Did I just ruin all inner peace for these people? And so needless to say, I was consumed by guilt and could not focus on my breathing for the rest of the time, could only focus on how blameworthy I was. And that was an incident, but it wasn't the entirety of the experience. It was really fascinating, actually, and that's why I went back a second time. But when I went again, I sort of realized that, one, I wasn't super invested in the meditation, and two, I didn't know why I was sitting there. I wasn't very studied on Buddhism or Zen, and I didn't know the motives behind meditation, although obviously I respected them, and I respected everyone else in the room meditating with me. And in addition to that, in all of my prior experiences, I've learned best when I've been able to interact with other people and observe them and compare myself to them. And meditation is a very personal experience. You're sort of trapped inside your head. And while I was trying not to think, I couldn't help but think about how much I wanted to get to know the other people in the room. But I couldn't because I was trapped in the practice. And so I decided that I wasn't going to return. But with that being said, it's important for me to recognize that each of us learns differently. And because of that, when I'm standing up here delivering this presentation about the ideas of experiential learning, I can't assume that experiential learning is going to work for everyone here. The aspect of school that angers me the most is that we're expected to sit and take in information in the same unchanging ways each day. And that's a ridiculous idea because our brains are different. We learn differently, and we cannot conform to the same mode of learning. This being considered, I cannot deliver this presentation and say that experiential learning is the way. And so I'm offering up these ideas because they have changed my life so drastically that I must share them in the event that they change the life of just one of you. That would be enough. So my trip to Florida for this project was probably the most emotional of my experiences. I was there with my mom to help organize the Pan Florida Challenge, which was a 160-mile bike ride from Naples to West Palm Beach to raise money for hungry kids. And I had no idea what went into this type of event. And both my mom and I were expecting, a fun, easygoing experience. And it was a ton of fun, but it was the opposite of easygoing. On our first week there, just like leading up to the event, we were exhausted and overworked. And the night before the ride, I think I got two and a half hours of sleep and was functioning on nothing but donuts. Really small donuts too. In fact, we got them from a place called Peace, Love, and Little Donuts. So it wasn't a whole lot of carbohydrates. But when the event kicked off, my mom and I and all the other volunteers, we jumped into our cars, our large minivans, and we rode alongside with the riders the whole day. And my job was to sit in the passenger seat with my computer, and the photographer would send photos my way of the riders, and I would add a little blurb and then send that back out to families and friends and donors of the riders in each picture. And that sounds like an easy job, but it wasn't. And on top of that, I was looking down the whole time. I was feeling car sick. And to make a long story short, every time I looked out the window at the riders, I couldn't help but feel jealous because I didn't know why I was stuck with the task of sitting in a car on my computer when I could be out in the fresh air riding a bike. So I made myself a promise right then and there that I would return the next year and ride, and we'll see if I follow through. So despite the fact that I was yearning the entire time to be a rider and not a volunteer, I did have a fantastic volunteer experience. When you're working closely with other people to reach a common goal, you're bound to make connections, and there were plenty of people, plenty of volunteers with whom I did make connections. And despite the fact that we were exhausted and overworked, we knew that we were achieving great things and that our cause was a meaningful one. In the end, I was completely blissful, and not just because I was overtired, but because it felt so refreshing to feel something real, to feel real passion. And I skipped a week of school to go on this trip, and I remember thinking towards the end, I might die from exhaustion if I keep this up any longer, but it would be better than sitting in class. And obviously I was feeling very hyperbolic at this point, but the point was that I was feeling something, and it felt like I was feeling something for the first time in a while. And my experience in Florida gave me an inside look at what goes on behind a major event like this. And it also taught me that I'm more of a doer than a planner. And on top of this, the experience led to more insight about experiences and how real learning is often paired with strong emotion and strong memories. So perhaps my favorite of the several experiences that I embarked on took place on the Gould maple farm in Shelburne Falls, Western Massachusetts. And among my friends and my peers, whenever I bring up my project, they say, "Oh yeah, yours is on farming, right?" And that's partly the case, but farming is just one piece of the puzzle. It is probably my favorite piece, and that's because I've always had a soft spot for farming and ranching and gardening. I'm just a romantic when it comes to living off the land. But in the middle picture up there, you can see a contraption that collects milk from cows. And while it is called the Gould Maple Farm, the primary business on the farm is milking cows. And Larry is the farm owner. His wife's name is Karen, and I stayed with them on 2 separate occasions for my project. And basically followed them around, learned what they did each day, and absorbed everything that I could. So this isn't a great picture because I was holding a slippery milk bottle in one hand and my phone in the other, but I got to do things on the farm like feed baby cows, and I got to wash sap buckets, which sounds like the worst job ever, but it was actually pretty interesting. And I think we cleaned over 1,500, and you feel pretty accomplished when you do something like that. And obviously, not all of these experiences are objectively groundbreaking or extremely interesting, but I mean, there's nothing magical about washing buckets or feeding hay to cows, or even the milking process. And on top of that, there are plenty of people who would hate to spend a weekend on a farm because it's stinky and you get poop on you and a lot of cow saliva too. So the thing is that even doing something as simple as washing buckets was a heightened, exciting experience because it was different. And it was out of my ordinary. And because of that, I was moved to break the experience down and dive into my thoughts and reach a few conclusions. One idea that kept tripping me up, though, was that while this experience was wholly new and refreshing for me, and while it was out of my ordinary, it was completely ordinary for Larry. I remember asking him, what do you think you'll do when you retire? And he said, die. And I chuckled at first. I thought it was a joke, but I realized it's really true. For the rest of his life, he will be working from 5:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night on the farm, doing the same chores, seeing the same things each day. The novelty that I am chasing, the novelty that I found on the farm is exactly what he cannot attain. And when I realized this, the guilt set in. And it was then that I asked myself the question, who can experience? And the simplest answer is, not everyone. Experiences take time and energy and money, and people like Larry can't always afford to give those things up. He doesn't have the time to go out and experience new things. Of course, there are plenty of ways to experience the world without spending a ton of money, but time is key. So with this in mind, there was a point in my project when I started to ask and wonder if chasing novelty and chasing new experiences could actually be selfish, because one, not everyone can do it, and because two, you know, the quest for your passion is a very personal one. I believe, however, after carefully considering this idea, that if you enter into your quest with modesty and with the aim to inspire others with your passion, then there can be no blame in it. And as long as you encourage others to do what you have done in discovering yourself, then you're faultless, and in fact, you're exemplary. So this second question of why should we experience is the overarching one. And if I have not already made my answers clear, then they are as follows. The first is this. In the process of learning through experiences, we expose ourselves to a multitude of lifestyles. And I believe that it's imperative to experience a variety of lifestyles because, you know, you're opening yourself up to all aspects of life and of how to live. And it also has taught me an extremely valuable lesson, and that's that, well, for a long time, I was resentful of my own privilege and of how I knew other people who, you know, did back-breaking work each day just to survive, and that wasn't my lifestyle at all. I began to admire and idolize the people that I met who did this sort of work, and I actually started to put them above all other people. But I had the realization that there is no right way to live. All lifestyles are flawed, and in all of them there is also something to admire, something to desire, and something to respect. And instead of fixating on what I deem to be the flaws in my life, I should be grateful for the opportunity that I have to go out and experience new things and find what I love. I should be grateful for my ability to experience because it gives me the opportunity to learn beyond the classroom and find my passion. So my final answer to the question of why we should experience, and the answer that lies at the center of my beliefs, is that I want to find, you know, what I love. Some people find their passion in school, but as far as I can tell, I'm not going to find mine here. And if you too are not finding your passion in school, then I would invite you to go find it somewhere else. Take every opportunity that you're presented to go try new things and see and experience what you have not experienced before. I will not demand it, but I will urge that if what you're doing right now is not doing it for you, then you ought to go find what you love somewhere else. Drop everything and go find it. Who knows how long it will take, how much it will cost, how much it will hurt? Who knows how close it will bring you to death? The end justifies the means. And if in the end you do find what you love, then it was all worth it. Thank you.